On November 3, 1984, 17-year-old Lisa McVey rode her bicycle home from a double shift at Krispy Kreme in Tampa, Florida. Hours earlier, she'd written a suicide note. Years of sexual abuse by her grandmother's boyfriend had left her feeling hopeless, and she planned to end her life when she got home. But as she passed a church parking lot around 2 a.m., a man jumped from the darkness, grabbed her by the neck, dragged her off her bike, and shoved a gun against her temple. In that terrifying moment, something clicked in Lisa's mind. She didn't want to die anymore. She wanted to live. And what happened over the next 26 hours would not only save her life, it would bring down one of Florida's most brutal serial killers. Bobby Joe Long was born on October 14, 1953, in Canova, West Virginia. From the very beginning, his life was marked by challenges that would shape him into a monster. He was born with Klinefelter syndrome, a genetic condition where he had an extra X chromosome. This caused excessive estrogen production, and when he hit puberty, Bobby developed breasts. He was mercilessly bullied throughout his childhood and eventually underwent surgery to remove 6 pounds of breast tissue when he was 16. But the teasing had already done its damage. Bobby's childhood was anything but normal. His parents divorced when he was young, and he lived with his mother Luella, a cocktail waitress who brought different men home regularly. In their tiny one-bedroom apartment, Bobby shared a bed with his mother until he was 13 years old, forced to witness her encounters with these men. He deeply resented his mother for wearing revealing clothing to work and for her parade of boyfriends. This twisted relationship would fuel a hatred of women that would later explode into violence. As if his psychological trauma wasn't enough, Bobby suffered a series of severe head injuries throughout his childhood. At age 5, he fell from a swing and was knocked unconscious, with a stick piercing his eyelid. At 6, he crashed his bicycle into a parked car, suffering a severe concussion and losing several teeth. At 7, he fell from a pony directly onto his head. At 13, he fell downstairs and remained unconscious for 20 minutes. Each injury compounded the damage to his developing brain, but there was hope for a while. At age 13, Bobby met Cynthia Bartlett, his high school sweetheart. They dated for 6 years before marrying in 1974 and had 2 children together. Bobby joined the Army and was stationed at Homestead Air Force Base in Florida. For a brief time, it seemed he might escape his troubled past. Then came the accident that changed everything. Around 1974, while serving in the military, Bobby was involved in a devastating motorcycle crash. He suffered another severe head trauma and nearly lost his leg. While recovering in the hospital, something in Bobby fundamentally changed. Nurses reported that he masturbated multiple times a day, sometimes as many as 5 times while still in a body cast. His sex drive became insatiable. When he returned home to Cynthia, he was violent, demanding sex constantly and beating her for minor infractions. The loving husband and father had transformed into an abuser. Cynthia endured years of physical and sexual violence before finally filing for divorce in 1980. After the divorce, Bobby's crimes began. From 1980 to 1983, he became known as the classified ad rapist. He would scour local newspapers for classified ads where women were selling household items or furniture. He'd call pretending to be interested, visit their homes during the day when husbands were at work, and then attack. He'd pull a knife, bind the women, rape them, and often rob their homes before escaping. Over 3 years, Bobby raped approximately 50 women across Florida and even California, with victims as young as 12 years old. In 1981, he was arrested and charged with rape, but witnesses claimed the encounter was consensual and he was acquitted. In 1983, Bobby moved to Tampa Bay, and his crimes escalated from rape to murder. Between March and November 1984, he killed at least 10 women in an 8-month reign of terror. He drove his maroon Dodge Magnum up and down Nebraska Avenue, an area frequented by sex workers and exotic dancers. He would convince women to get into his car, or simply abduct them if they refused. He'd take them to his apartment, rape them repeatedly, and then drive them to remote locations where he strangled them to death. Some victims had their throats slit. One was shot. He would pose their bodies in sexually degrading positions before dumping them in fields, orange groves, or along roadsides. His first victim was 20-year-old artist Anne Wick, killed on March 27, 1984. Then came 19-year-old Injun Thi Long, known as Lana, an exotic dancer found dead on May 13. 2 weeks later, 22-year-old Michelle Denise Sims, a former beauty pageant contestant from California, was found off an Interstate 4 overpass, her throat slashed. The bodies kept appearing. 22-year-old Elizabeth Loudenbach, 21-year-old Vicky Elliott, 18-year-old Chanel Williams, Bobby's only black victim and the only one who'd been shot, 28-year-old Karen Dean's friend, 22-year-old Kimberly Hobbs, 18-year-old Virginia Johnson, 21-year-old Kim Swan. The Tampa Bay area was terrified. Police formed a task force but struggled to catch the killer. Red carpet fibers found on several victims suggested the killer used the same vehicle, but they needed more. Then came Lisa McVey. After kidnapping her at gunpoint, Bobby blindfolded her and took her to his apartment, where he raped her repeatedly over 26 hours, but Lisa was brilliant. She deliberately loosened her blindfold by clenching her jaw each time Bobby adjusted it, allowing her to glimpse details. She saw the word Magnum on his dashboard. She counted his steps to his apartment. She touched everything she could in his bathroom to leave fingerprints. When Bobby washed her hair in a bizarre moment of kindness, she asked him why he did this. He blamed his hatred for women. Lisa listened, showed him sympathy, even offered to be his secret girlfriend if he'd let her go. She made up a story about being the sole caretaker of her sick father. Her survival tactics worked. On November 4th, Bobby drove Lisa back near where he'd abducted her and released her, still blindfolded. When she removed the blindfold, the first thing she saw was a beautiful oak tree, a symbol of her survival. She went home where her grandmother's boyfriend beat her and interrogated her for 5 hours, not believing her story. Her grandmother finally called police dismissively, saying Lisa was making up a kidnapping story. At the station, a female detective didn't believe Lisa either. Her calm demeanor seemed suspicious. Lisa finally demanded someone more intelligent be brought in. Detective Sergeant Larry Pinkerton listened to her detailed account and believed her. Days later, Lisa heard a news report about another body being found. She called Pinkerton and said she was certain her kidnapper was the serial killer terrorizing Tampa Bay. She provided crucial details: the red Dodge Magnum, the apartment layout, the timeline of when she heard Bobby use an ATM, his pockmarked face, small mustache and clean-cut appearance. She even identified him from a photo lineup. On November 16, 1984, police arrested Bobby Joe Long outside a movie theater. When they searched his apartment, they found all the forensic evidence Lisa had deliberately left behind. The red carpet fibers in his car matched those found on victims' bodies. When questioned about the murders, Bobby initially tried to deflect, but when shown photographs of the victims, he eventually confessed, smiling and saying, "Well, I guess you got me good. Yes, I killed them. All the ones in the paper. I did them all." Bobby Joe Long pleaded guilty on September 24, 1985, to 8 homicides and the abduction and rape of Lisa McVey. He received 26 life sentences without parole and 7 life sentences with the possibility of parole. For the murder of Michelle Denise Sims, he was sentenced to death in July 1986. He spent over 3 decades on death row. On May 23, 2019, after eating his final meal of roast beef, bacon, French fries, and soda, Bobby Joe Long was executed by lethal injection. Lisa McVey Nolan sat in the front row of witnesses, now a deputy with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. She'd worn a homemade t-shirt that read "Long Overdue." Also present was Linda Nuttall, another survivor Bobby had raped, and family members of the murdered women. Bobby never opened his eyes during the execution. When asked if he had any final statement, he simply said, "No." At 6:55 p.m., he was pronounced dead. Afterward, Lisa spoke to reporters, saying something profound. Bobby Joe Long, thank you. Thank you for choosing me instead of another 17-year-old little girl. I have forgiven you for what you have done to me. Had I not forgiven you, I might as well be in my own prison without walls. My life changed forever and for the better. I chose not to remain a victim. I chose to live. Bobby Joe Long's story is one of tragedy begetting tragedy, but in the end, he was brought down by the courage and intelligence of a 17-year-old girl who refused to become another statistic, who turned what should have been her last night alive into the beginning of a career dedicated to justice.